Hey martial arts addicts all over the world, welcome back to another one of my videos. Today I'm going to discuss a topic that I don't think gets that much attention on the martial arts scene, and that is to have a brief look at the folk style wrestling traditions of the British Isles. Now before I get started, thank you to everyone that is supporting my channel through watching the videos, commenting and subscribing to my channel. Please continue to do this, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. And with that, let's have a look at the folk wrestling styles of the UK, and I hope you enjoy. Right, I'm going to kick off this video by looking at Cornish wrestling, which is one of the two styles of jacket wrestling found in the UK. So the wrestlers wear a white canvas jacket that's kind of similar to a judo or jiu-jitsu gi. However, the jacket doesn't look as thick, and nor do the wrestlers wear a belt. Furthermore, in judo and jiu-jitsu, the grips are usually one hand holding the opponent's gi by the collar and the other hand taking the sleeve at the elbow. In contrast, it looks like the traditional grip in Cornish wrestling is for both hands to grip either side of the collar. Now, in addition, the jacket has two short ropes attached at the front, and these can be used for gripping and setting up throws. Now, the rules of Cornish wrestling state that all holds and grips should be on the jacket. So you can't do things like grab your opponent's wrist or grab the back of their neck. Now the way to win a match is to throw your opponent so that you score something called a back. Now the back is defined as the area in between the shoulders and the butt. The four corners of the back, so that's the shoulders and the hips, are known as pins. If three or more pins touch the ground, that is called as a back, and the wrestler wins the contest. If the wrestler throws the opponent, but the opponent lands on their side, so their right shoulder and right hip, then a pin is awarded and both wrestlers stand up and resume the contest. A Cornish wrestler called George Bazley went up against the jiu-jitsu master Yukio Tani in 1926, and it appears that George was both larger and younger than his rival, who was 44 years old. Now, despite a strong start, George succumbed to a chokehold in which Yukio Tani is described as using his legs to effect the technique. So I'm guessing that this could have possibly been the triangle choke, called in judo known as Sangaku Jime. Now what's particularly interesting is that it seems that Yukio Tani was a respected figure in Cornwall, as he'd practiced and become efficient in the Cornish wrestling style. And it was also felt that George Bazley, despite losing the match, had performed really well, and he was praised for this. Devon wrestling was similar to the Cornish style in that you wore a jacket. However, it looks like it differed in two ways. Now the first is slightly subtle, but from an article that I read called Wrestling in the West, that was published in a copy of the Sporting magazine from 1822, the writer says that the wrestlers take on a collar and elbow grip. So that's similar to what you'd see in other jacket grappling or wrestling styles from other countries like judo and sambo. Now this is opposed to the seemingly double collar grip that the Cornish style seems to favour. Now the second difference, which is pretty big, is that the Devon wrestling style allows the use of kicks to the shins. To make the kicks more effective, the Devon wrestlers wore shoes. Now, in the article that I mentioned from 1822, the author writes about how the wrestlers had to have the soles of their shoes checked to make sure that they didn't have nails or sheets of tin hidden in there. This tells you that the wrestlers didn't only just kick, they must have also attempted to scrape the sole of the foot or shoe against the opponent's shins, which you can imagine must have been very effective and painful. Now I'm guessing that this style of wrestling must have been pretty similar to the shin kicking fights that are held at the Cotswold Olympic Games in Gloucester. Now, Devon wrestling appears to have started to go into decline around 1878. However, there seems to have been a demonstration match again against a jiu-jitsu guy, and this happened in 1907. Now it seems that the Devon wrestler was successful in throwing the jiu-jitsu opponent onto his back. However, the article then explains that the jiu-jitsu opponent had the advantage of ground fighting. This is because ground fighting doesn't exist in a lot of the folk styles like Devon and Cornish wrestling. Now I'm not sure how the jiu-jitsu fighter won the match, but it sounds like he was able to secure the guard position or take the wrestler's back. I'm not really sure, and I'm also not sure as to who the jiu-jitsu fighter was. So if anyone does know any information on that, please let me know in the comments. Unfortunately, Devon Wrestling eventually became extinct, but there is some good news in that the Devonshire Wrestling Society are attempting to bring this particular style back into practice, and let's wish them all the success with that. Now, Cornish and Devon Wrestling can both be classified as jacket styles. The next two forms of wrestling are known as Backhold. Now, these are the Cumberland and Westmoreland style and the Scottish Backhold wrestling style. In both of these, the wrestlers take hold of each other by resting their chin on the opponent's right shoulder, and their right arm goes underneath the opponent's left armpit, kind of like an underhook. Now, the wrestlers then link their hands around their opponent's back with a hold that's called an S grip. Now, people that wrestle or do BJJ, they'll be familiar with this grip, but for those that aren't, it's basically hooking the fingers of the hands together. Now, once the wrestlers have the grip, the referee in Cumberland and Westmoreland wrestling will call on guard, and the wrestlers begin to wrestle. Whereas in Scottish Backhold style, the referee calls hold. Now, the styles after that are then pretty much the same. If a wrestler lets any part of his body other than his feet touch the ground, he loses a match. If both wrestlers fall, then the first to hit the ground loses. If it can't be decided as to which wrestler hit the ground first, then both wrestlers are made to resume the match. Now, as in the Cornish and Devon styles, both Backhold wrestling traditions don't feature any groundwork. So if one of the wrestlers is thrown, both opponents are stood up to wrestle again, usually to see who can do the best out of a few bouts, usually out of 3 in Cumberland and Westmoreland style and 5 bouts in Scottish Backhold. The last wrestling tradition of the UK that I want to talk about has actually had a huge impact in the modern forms of wrestling, such as American folk or collegiate wrestling and Olympic freestyle. Now, this form differs from the other British styles because it's the only one that allowed the wrestlers to continue fighting on the ground, and it also allowed the use of submissions. This style was known as Lancashire catch wrestling, or catch as catch can. Now, in the other British styles that I've spoken about, they all begin with a particular grip, but the Lancashire form of wrestling didn't begin with any particular grip, so the wrestlers had to try and grab or catch hold of the opponent's body, hence the name catch or catch as catch can. Now, Roy Woods, who runs the Snake Pit Wrestling Club in Wigan, is a world authority on Lancashire catch wrestling, and he says that the style was used by miners in the late 1800s and early 1900s as a form of recreation and fun. In catch wrestling, if a wrestler was thrown, they would have the opportunity to either fight their way back to their feet or continue to get a better position on the ground. If the wrestler was pinned to the ground on his back, then he would lose the match. Lancashire catch wrestling had many submission techniques, some of them extremely dangerous and brutal. The style most probably allowed neck cranks and spinal locks, which could be very dangerous. And in addition, catch allowed for leg locking techniques, and it could be possible that some of the arm locks might have made their way into both judo and BJJ. Now, one thing that I found out was that Lancashire catch wrestling was actually an Olympic sport in 1908. But after this, the amateur movement removed the submissions, they altered the rules, and this brought about both collegiate wrestling and freestyle wrestling, which we see in the Olympics. Martial arts addicts all over the world, thank you for watching my video. All of these styles of wrestling have a very rich history, and really each of them deserves a video of their own. However, I hope that you've enjoyed the brief look that I've given each one of them. If you did, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, peace and love to all of you.